Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, September 12th regular council meeting. Before we get started, Village of Anmore would like to open our meetings by recognizing the many Indigenous peoples of our area, including the following First Nations with communities are now located in the region that we now know as Metro Vancouver. That would be the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam. Further, we'd like to honor the important place in history occupied by the many territorial keepers of these lands and waters around us since time immemorial. I'll call the meeting to order. Could I get the agenda be approved? Someone to move that? Move second. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Public input. Public input. Public is welcome to participate in the public portion of the meeting of anything on the agenda. 2-minute time limit. Would anybody like to participate in the public input of anything on the agenda? I would. If you'd like to get up and name an address and what it is on the agenda that you're referring to.
Well, I'm referring to the clear cutting.
That is not the time and place right now. You can ask that at question period. This is only for things that are on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Okay.
When can I ask these questions?
Public question period.
Okay. Is that tonight?
Yeah, it'll be right near the end of the meeting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Nancy Maloney, 1724 East Road. Several thoughts regarding the council committee's agenda item. If additional people apply over the specified number of positions, could these additional people be appointed as non-voting alternates, as the terms are quite long for the positions, and then those people could replace any of the originally appointed persons should vacancies occur by those persons leaving during that long period of time, and they would have greater familiarity with the committee. So they would be appointed as alternates, not actually committee members, which I think would be quite a desirable idea.
Can we raise the volume on our mic? I can't.
Is the mic even on right now?
They said yes.
It is?
They said yes.
Okay. Is the blue light on?
No.
Then it's not on. So yeah. Can you push right in front?
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Okay,
Yeah.
now we're working. Yeah, I had asked and they said it was on,
Yeah,
but it wasn't.
yeah.
Okay. Start over?
No, that's fine. You're providing input. You're not asking questions right now.
Okay, so don't start over with my first point.
Does everybody need to hear it again? Okay.
Couldn't
yeah,
hear.
yeah,
Okay.
sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so anyway, my thought was, this is related to the council committee's agenda item. If additional people apply, which may be unlikely, over the specified number of positions, could these persons be appointed as non-voting alternates, so not as actual committee members? The terms are quite long, like several years, and then these alternates could replace any of the originally appointed persons should vacancies occur, which would make things easier into the future. Okay, and the terms of reference indicate that there are no financial implications for these committees of council, but my memory is that a budget was recently approved for the committees to have clerical support, and money was authorized. So it seems like there, unless I'm wrong, that there are some financial implications. And very quickly here, and reading this agenda item, I noted that the mayor is appointed as an ex officio member of the Community Engagement, et cetera, committee. But it seemed to be the case only for that committee, which I wondered why that was the case. And also in the terms of reference, it didn't seem to say what constitutes a quorum for these committees, like what % of the people have to be there for it to be considered meeting quorum. So that doesn't seem to be specified. And most importantly, I would like to know which councillors will be appointed as chairs for which committees.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
so no reply to any of these.
All of that will be released when the committees are formed. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, we'll get into the meeting. We have no delegations. We have minutes of the special council meeting held on June 29th. The recommendation would read
that the minutes of the special council meeting held on June 29th, 2023 be adopted as circulated.
Could I get someone to move those minutes? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Richardson.
Well, I raised this last time, which is why it was delayed and put off. When I
I think we're just, again, we're talking about the minutes, so we're not getting into the actual discussion. So, Ms. Snell, yeah, Ms. Snell, could you please respond to the reflection of the minutes?
Yeah, what's recorded is reflecting what happened at the meeting, and there were some parts of the discussion that weren't included in the resolution that was voted on, so some of the discussion is not included here.
So we're just approving the minutes at this point in time.
I think it's wrong to not have discussion points relative to where money is spent in the minutes. So,
Okay. Thank you. Any other? Please. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, we'll make sure. Yeah. No, that's fair enough. Yeah, we'll make sure. Sorry. Okay. See no other comments, I'll call the question on those minutes for approval. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried with, carried. We'll now move on to the minutes of the regular council meeting held on July 18th, 2023. Recommendation would read
That the minutes of the regular council meeting held on July 18th, 2023 be adopted as circulated.
someone to move those minutes. Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Any business arising from those minutes? No. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Any council member who wishes to remove an item for further discussion may do so at this time. Councillor Weberink.
I wanted, hang on a sec, just local government climate action program 2-year survey report, and then the next generation 911 funding, so B and C.
B.
to keep it at 2.5 million, or is it on top of the earlier borrowing?
Through the chair, this is to replace the short-term borrowing, and this recommendation is the slight change in language that was requested by the Municipal Finance Authority on the original recommendation that we sent in. They sent us back saying that they required this wording, so that's why the replacement is included this evening.
Okay, thank you.
And I can tell you that on that note, we just had an MFA meeting and we were approved. quite well. So with that being said, I'll call the question on 7A. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. And this was just really to follow up with the residents' demands that they would like to have some debt on the hub for future residents to pay to cover some of the costs. We'll now move on to 7B, Local Government Climate Action Program Year 2 Survey Report. Councillor Weber.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that the report in the agenda is our answers to the questionnaire, through the chair.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, this is similar to last year where we are required to fill out the report that has a very small prescribed list of options for us to reply to, and we then have to present it to council in order to receive our funding from year to year.
And just a comment, I mean, just look, I remember the questionnaire from before, and it is very tough for a small village to tick a lot of these boxes. It's just yet another challenge we have to face. But I think we're all being reminded that we do have to start to consider these kinds of things. Okay, thank you.
Could I get someone to move that recommendation? Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Now we're on to 7C, the 2023 Next Generation 9/11 funding. Could I get someone to move it first? I'll get moved, seconded, and then I'll move over to Councillor Weber.
Yeah, I'm just curious exactly what it is. Maybe through the chair?
Yeah,
Is
Ms.
there
Shaw.
an explanation?
Oh, or Ms. Elrick.
Sorry, through the chair. So this money is provided to local governments and First Nations in order to support the preparedness for the implementation of the new 911 system that's going to be coming into effect in spring of 2025. So there's going to be added text to 911, and there's going to be some GIS improvements and other things that are unfolding. So we're waiting for new details still from the provincial government on what exactly this new system will look like and how it's going to operate, and then what local government expectations are around that in terms of infrastructure and training and what we need to do. And then at that time, once we have a better sense of that, then we'll know where we want to allocate these funds and whether we'll need additional funding in order to meet those requirements.
Okay, yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think it's also important to know that, as the trustees know, Saskatchewan Volunteer Fire Department does not subscribe into this. Currently, we're still going through Surrey because of the costs and also because of the fact that the radio systems don't work. Our radio system does not work in conjunction with theirs at this current time. So, any further comments? Oh, Councillor Trowbridge.
Yes, as per the trustee meeting, Chief Sharp was taking us through that, and for our volunteer involvement, the firefighters' involvement, the capital expenditure to get on side with that is very substantial. But more than that, the annual fees cost more than our entire system. So there's going to have to be some discussion here for, it's one thing for us to adopt it, but I'm not sure our firefighters can.
Good. Don't see no more comments. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay. We're now on to the legislative reports. 9A, Anmore Drinking Water Conservation Plan Bylaw Amendment. A report dated September 8th, 2023 from our Manager of Corporate Services. Ms. Schnell.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is mainly a housekeeping item to bring our bylaw in alignment with the Metro Vancouver Water Conservation Plan. The recommendation is that Council give first, second, and third readings to the Anmore Water Conservation Plan Amendment Bylaw number 684-2023.
Good. Can I have someone to move that? Moved. Second. Any discussion? Councillor Trowbridge.
Very quick question. So when I read through, it was a little bit hard to discern what changed from the one before, but the question I do have is, in the bracketed areas, if something is silent, then it's not restricted, is that correct? So if it's unmentioned.
Can you give me a specific example?
Yes, and I believe, now you're testing my memory, I believe in stage 1, 2, 3, there's no reference, for example, to washing a vehicle, but there's a reference to cleaning impermeable surfaces.
That's right.
And 4, it mentions impermeables and washing vehicles. So if it's silent on those issues, then it's not restricted.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Good. See no more comments. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll now move on to 9B, 2301 Sunnyside Road Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 685-2023. Report dated September 8th from our Manager of Development Services. Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. So we'll bring a report forward today for a single development here on 2301 Sunnyside Road. It is an existing RS1 lot, and the proponent is coming forward to request a movement into our now set infill development zone, INF, and tonight we've looked through it, and it meets the policy requirements under our policy 61. So I'll just briefly go through the checklist here. One, not been created through a previous comprehensive development plan or subdivided in the past 5 years. The lot has not been subdivided in the past 5 years. The parcel is between 0.98 acres to 2.04 acres. The parcel's 1 acre. 3, does the proposed parcel of land have an appropriate graded area? It has suitable land for subdivision. Is there a requirement to extend or expand municipal infrastructure? No, there's no requirement to expand. And lastly, does it have the required frontage of 50 meters or more? The property has 67.5 meters in road frontage. Based on our review, our recommendation is to move forward with rezoning this land into the infill.
Would we follow the procedure that we did before by recommending it to the APC and?
My staff recommendation is as follows: the council give first, second reading to Anmore zoning amendment bylaw 685-23 and not refer it. However, we do have number 2, which is where we have referred it. I would just say again, last time we went to APC, there was 0 comments about any of the infill. They just asked, did it meet the policy requirements? Yeah, we did.
Not the last 4,
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
Yeah. I remember being in the room.
I was there.
yeah. So obviously it's council's direction on if they wish to go to APC.
Okay, we'll put forth the your recommended recommendation.
Okay, the council give first, second reading to Anmore zoning amendment bylaw 685-2023, and the council directs staff to set a date for the public hearing for Anmore zoning amendment bylaw 685-2023.
Can I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded, open up for discussion. Any discussion? Councillor Richardson, did you have your hand?
I was seconding.
Oh, okay. See no discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, now we'll go on to 11A, new business, council committee terms of reference, report dated September 8th from our manager of corporate services, Michelle.
Thank you, Your Worship. So at the July 18th, 2023 regular council meeting, staff was directed to update the terms of references for the council committees. So staff has gone ahead and completed that now. The Community Engagement, Culture and Inclusion Committee was updated to add age-friendly, including youth and accessibility matters, update the mandate and membership to meet the Accessible British Columbia Act requirements, and increase the membership to 7 members. For all the select committees to change the frequency of the meetings to quarterly or at the call of the chair and increase memberships to 7, including the chair, and for the Finance Committee to change the frequency of the meetings to quarterly or at the call of the chair. The recommendation is that the terms of references for the Community Engagement, Culture and Inclusion Committee, Environment Committee, Finance Committee, Parks and Recreation Committee, and Public Safety Committee as attached to the report dated September 8th, 2023 from the Manager of Corporate Services entitled Council Committee Terms of Reference be adopted. Thank you.
Can I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Open up for discussion. Councillor Webering.
I just want to confirm, so basically, most of the committees are doing meetings every 3 months. I guess this is maybe through the chair to our administration. When it says administrative support is provided by staff, does that mean there's going to be someone from staff attending each meeting and minuting, that sort of thing? Just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, through the chair. So previously there was a budget approved for consultant, so
Right.
it's staff or somebody we delegate that to.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Councillor Cryer.
Thank you. I just have one question. The Parks Committee, has that always been Park and Rec? It has. I guess I'm thinking of it in terms of the CC Committee and activities such as yoga, fitness classes and such at the new hub. Would that then fall to Park and Rec, or would that be more of a CC Committee?
I guess that would be up to council to
Okay.
decide, but the mandate of the Parks and Recreation does include recreation opportunities, and it doesn't say, and sports, and doesn't say what venue it has to be held at.
Okay. Something that had been on our action list to get started at the new hub, so maybe we can just clarify that between whoever the chair is of Park and Rec and whoever the chair is of the CC Committee.
Are you the CC?
I don't know.
Can you do the yoga?
Can I do the yoga?
Okay.
Okay,
Any
I think
other-
we'll take this offline. Okay.
Any more questions?
No more.
Comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Now we're on to Capital Works, award of 2023 Capital Works project, report dated September 8, 2023 from our Chief Administrative Officer, but it looks like Mr. Boyd is going to be handling this.
Sideball there, okay? Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So we recently closed the public tender for the Capital Works. The package included works for Sunnyside Road multi-user pathway from Ludlow Lane, sorry, not Ludlow Lane, Summerwood Lane, all the way up to the top to East Road. The paving and regrading of Ludlow Lane, and then Bedwall Bay Road rehabilitation. We originally set the budgets at roughly 1.1 million. we tendered the public tender, and the lowest bidder came in at 1.95. However, we're expecting this to go over budget because we actually we put the tender in for the whole of the multi-user pathway from the top all the way, from the bottom all the way up to the top, expecting us not to be able to afford it because we're using grant funding. We want to make sure that we maximize our total grant funding here so we don't want to leave any money on the table for it. So prior to tonight, I've already been in discussions with the contractor about reducing the scope down to our budget. However, from a legal technical perspective, I can't change the contract until the contract is awarded. So it's like a chicken and egg situation that I need to kind of have the initial, we're awarding the contract, and then I will decrease the contract down to our budget value.
Good.
That's the general gist of it. And then finally, just we need to do some internal changing of some of the capital works allocation from Bedwell Bay paving to Ludlow Lane to keep it within our overall capital budget.
If you can just give a quick review of the 3 projects, just
Yeah,
so
sure.
people are
So the multi-user pathway for Sunnyside Road, we're looking to create the leg from Summerwood Lane, so at the bottom of the hill here where the last subdivision is on our current hill on Sunnyside Road, up to East Road. So we have a new complete pathway which we need to infill the ditches and then create that nice pathway for the public to use for both cyclists and for pedestrians at the same time. So that would be a 3.5 meter wide side.
And this would be part of the TransLink grant funding?
This one's not TransLink.
Okay.
This one this year is for a provincial grant that we were awarded. And then we've also been collecting funds on top, which will be used as TransLink, but we're not allowed to mix 2 grants together. Right. It's one of the provisions within the grant funding. So what we would do is the leftover portion now, we would look into the future years to
Match.
put all of those grants together and then do the final segment come up the next year or 2.
And that pathway as well will alleviate some of the, I'm going to say, safety issues around the bus stop as well, to be able to pull it off a little bit of the road.
That's right. As part of the design, we've kind of moved everything away, and we have a real nice bus stop locations now going
Similar
forward,
to
which are
what, I
accessible.
guess it would mirror very much what's on East Road and Sunnyside, north of East Road.
Correct.
Which again, I get a ton of people complimenting
Yeah.
me on it. So
Plus, it includes some street furniture as
Yeah.
well and what have you on there as well, which
good.
is part of the funding.
And then the other projects, the Belcarra portion, Belcarra Bay Road, that's right at the entrance, and I think most people that drive that way, that's right at the entrance to Crystal Creek.
Yeah.
That road is in pretty bad shape, and it's kind of interesting because from First Avenue, where the stop sign is, that's Port Moody, and then we have a section of that road which is approximately how many meters?
It's about 200 meters.
200 meters,
Yeah.
right at the end of Crystal Creek. Yeah, and so we have to, the challenge is when we're plowing, we have to go out there, go onto Port Moody and then plow that section. So it is quite an issue, but I know the road is in bad shape. We've patched it together several times and it needs to be ground down and redone.
That's correct.
Yeah.
We have to go and finish that. I would just iterate on that one. The majority of the funding comes out of our MRN budget directly from TransLink for operations. So that's where the majority of the funds come for that piece because it's part of the MRN network.
And then lastly, the Ludlow Lane, that was supposed to be paved last year, but with the overages that we had on Hemlock, we wanted to get Hemlock done, and it was more important. So that's where that money got taken from. So we're wanting to get it paved this year. So.
Yep.
So okay. So you have a recommendation?
Yep. Recommendation: the council approve the award of the contract for the 2023 capital works for a total contract price of $1.953273, including GST to Lafarge Canada, and that the village enter negotiations to remove a portion of the scope for Sunnyside multi-user pathway to bring the works within the allocated budget.
Get someone to move that? Moved. Second. Any discussion? I'll go right on the end first. Councillor Richardson.
Okay, so I'm used to do contract negotiations, and it's my experience you don't reward a lot and then try and pull it back. Like it feels really strange to me. Like, what motivation do they have to say, okay, you only pay us $120 and we'll do this, and then where does the allocated funds go? Because we're actually awarding a contract for 1.9. I would much prefer that you rewrite it and we reward them the 1.2 or whatever it happens to be, specifically for the work. It's much clearer, it's much cleaner.
So we have an option to do that, if you want me to just answer that.
Can I just?
If we wanted, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we've done it this way in the past, and the reason being is that our engineering department and grants have come forth with the full scope of the project, and then it's up to council to make that determination as to how much is going to be spent. I haven't heard anything yet from this council saying they want to spend the full 1.9, but we have in the language of the recommendation that the scope of the project will be to match what the appropriate grant funding is. So that's why that's been done before, because sometimes I've seen it previously is that council will want the whole project done, and it gives the opportunity for that to happen. So I'll just move it over to you, Chris.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons too, and to Councillor Richardson, the way that this contract is what we call a unit rate contract. So we have set like volumes of tonnage and certain amounts of gravel that needs to go in. So it's easy for us to remove a section of it to get us down to the right allocation of funds, if that makes sense. It isn't just a lump sum where we don't know where the money's at. We know exactly what each ton of gravel costs, what each ton of asphalt costs, so we know exactly how much we're going to get bang for our dollar in that term. So we know we're not getting dinged, per se, if we've removed scope.
And Lafarge is okay with us only giving them 1.1. They're aware that's happening.
Correct. Yeah, we've already talked to them about this.
Yeah. Councillor Wyvern.
Yeah, I actually have the exact same concern. Obviously, I've been informed, and if that's the way the contract is written, and there's, but there is a certain amount of trust, you know, it seems to me, and I just don't want to be left holding the bag when we, award this contract and we knock so much off it, and then we're only getting up to Elementary Road, because they say, oh, the prices went up, and this, there needs to be some sort of guarantee, at least verbally.
Yeah, let me like clarify something. We're obviously not going to get them up from Ludlow Lane, sorry, not Ludlow, from Summerwood Lane all the way to East Road, because that would be the full sum of 1.9. We're obviously going to maybe get it to about halfway at this point, so that would take us to Alder, around there.
And that would be, you're going back, let's reverse it. We're going actually from backwards, from Sunnyside.
What we're going to do, I was
Or we're going
intending to do up.
Okay.
We to be very frank, we can do either version. I think the best bang for your buck is probably down below to spend provincial funds on that one. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify, you're obviously not going to get all of it in one go unless you want to increase the budget to be able to do all of it. And that wasn't my
Okay, so just let me be clear. So are we starting at the fire hall and going down as far as we can till we hit our threshold?
Perfectly frank, I was going to do the other way around, but there's no problem with doing it. If council would prefer it to be started at East Road and go down, that's no problem.
To me, that makes sense, because then we're connecting to the school a little bit better. I don't know what council thinks. I just sort of assume that, that's kind of where the paths have been starting. It seems to make sense to just continue to down the hill.
So the only reason I was thinking the other way around is because we already have the goat path already coming down the hill, which is somewhat passable.
A goat path.
And then it gets a really bad goat path as you go further down. So that was my thinking of trying to get rid of the really bad piece of the goat path.
I guess I'm just thinking how many people it would serve, like people that might be walking their kids to school, the school itself, going up to the fire hall there. There's a hub at the school, there's our village hub, there's the fire hall, and then there's the population of Anmore, which is mostly up there. It would just make sense to me. So
it's a great comment. I've got no problem doing it that way whatsoever. I think that's a perfectly reasonable expectation to do it.
Okay. I mean, I'm okay with passing it the way it is if we're confident that we're getting a certain amount for our 1.1 million, which is what we kind of approved.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
Good. Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, I just want to check my understanding. My understanding of these kinds of contracts is it's essentially a price per square foot.
Yes.
And so when we cut out 500,000 or 200,000, we know exactly how much we've contracted it. So we're not offering them a price and then waiting to see how far they go. We are actually negotiating the start and stop point.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. In terms of, there's logic to fix the worst, and there's logic to what Councillor Weverink is saying. I think what I would recommend is that you have a look at it, rethink it, and then we can just collectively decide what's the right way.
Good. Councillor Richardson.
Just for my clarity, because this feels weird to me, we're legally allowed to award a contract value that's not in the budget. Like, that's what we're doing.
I think with the recommendation where we're saying we're going back down to the budget is how we stay within the awarded amount that was within our 5-year plan.
It feels strange to me, but okay.
Seeing no further comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Boyd. We'll now move on to 11B, the Public Alerting System, report dated September 8, 2023, from the Manager of Corporate Services. Ms. Shell.
Thank you, Your Worship. So to enhance our ability to notify residents and visitors to the community of actions to take in the event of an emergency, Council approved the cost to subscribe to a public notification system in the 5-year financial plan. So staff has looked at some, and this report is mainly based on Alertable. It's a notification software commonly used by local governments in our region. In fact, over 1,300 in Canada subscribe to this system. It has 2 levels of notifications, advisories and critical alerts, and it has 18 ways the public can choose to receive these notifications. Interestingly, the app already has about 500 people using Alertable that are subscribed to alerts specifically for the Anmore region, because this app also forwards things from Drive BC and Environment Canada and things like that. So there already are a subscriber base. The financial implications, it's already included in the capital budget for this year to implement the system, and then it's approximately $3,600 per year after that. So the recommendation is that the village subscribes to the Alertable Public Alerting System, and that the Public Alerting System Policy 74 attached as Appendix A be adopted.
Get someone to move that. Moved, seconded. I can certainly, before I open up, say that the, with our early email notifications, we've actually had a really good subscription rate. I know Carmen has been handling that, and it's been very good. And I hear a lot of positive news. People, get them. Everybody seems to be carrying their phone with them. So I think this is a step up, and I think it's a really good idea. I know that other municipalities around are going onto this as well, because it's good value. And like I said, we seem to be attached to our phones nowadays. So anyway, I'll open up for comments. Any, Councillor Webber?
I think it's a great system. I want to suggest adding a siren to the village. We're actually small enough that a siren would, when I take my nap, I don't have my phone, but I'd hear that siren. It's probably not maybe for this, but it's something I'd like council to consider and think about it.
I think we should actually bring that up at the trustee meeting. I think it would be something that Jay would get his thoughts on. I see
Karen has some comments.
Through the chair, definitely something that could be looked into, but the challenge with siren systems is people knowing what the siren is for. So for example, with the recent fires in Maui, they have a tsunami warning system, which is a siren. However, if that siren had gone off, people would likely have gone towards the fire as an exit route for a tsunami. So there are challenges around those types of alerting systems that people would not know specifically what that alert was from, whether it be an earthquake or a gas leak or that type of thing. But definitely something that we'll continue to look at, those types of alerts and others that can get that information out in a timely
Yeah, and I
manner.
was thinking about that, and I think one thing we could do, we would definitely have to have a public education campaign, and let people know, or remind them in our weekly, monthly report, that when you hear that siren, turn on your phone. That means that we're activating our emergency alert system. So it's just, that would be the direction. Go to your phone, you turn your computer on, turn your TV on, whatever. Go to some sort of communication device. But I know what you're saying.
Good. Councillor Trowbridge.
Alternatively, because, and your point is very valid, we're not probably going to have a tsunami, but alternatively to what Councillor Weverink is saying, because of our proximity to forests, because of the continuing drying years, etc., using the universal alarm on the phone is great, but maybe the siren, as we had talked before, is just for fire, because that's probably our most imminent danger.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Richardson.
So I actually really like another system. I think communication is better, not so much for the critical alerts, but for the advisory alerts. When we had high extreme fire and you couldn't do lawn mowing and then you could, that message didn't get out very clearly. Likewise with the drought restrictions that are going on and the water restrictions, I've told many people they can't have their sprinklers going. Likewise, I can't be power washing as I walk by their houses, and they're not even aware that these things are on. So I think more communication is better.
See no further, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, Mayor's report. Couple things. We have the deadline for the call for volunteers for our committees, which is this Friday, the 15th. So please send an email into the Village Hall. Please put a preference as to what committee you'd like to do. We've had a fairly good subscription so far, but just putting it out there for more. We have our UBCM coming up next week, at which point we will be meeting with BC Hydro. Some of the things that we're going to be just reviewing, the reservation system, which certainly has taken a lot of stress and off of the village, but there are still a few little things. There was some problems. Some people have reached out to me saying that they weren't able to produce their QR code to be able to get into the lake because the Wi-Fi or the service is very poor right at the entrance thing. So I'm going to be bringing that up with them as well. Our store down at Countryside has for several years has stored canoes down at the lake, and BC Hydro is saying that this cannot continue. So we'll have a discussion with that and that as well. So that's going to be going on probably, I think it's next week. I don't sure what the time, but we usually do have a yearly recap on BC Hydro into the successes. What else do I have? We had a Sasamat Volunteer Fire Department meeting last Wednesday, and Councillor Trowbridge is going to give a report on that. We have, just to be aware, just to follow up on the last conversation, the fire danger is still in effect in here. We just haven't had enough rain as of yet. It's still very, very dry out there, and the fire chief still has the fire danger in high. The one thing I wanted to mention about the Sasamat Volunteer Fire Department meetings is that we need to be able, these are public meetings. We're going to be getting into a process here where we're going to be starting to talk about 2 new fire halls. That was not meaning to steal his thunder or something like that, but we need to post these notices of meetings because they are public meetings. We also need to make sure the agendas are posted. We do in Anmore, I'm not going to speak to Bill Kerr, but we do include the minutes, the approved minutes in our agendas as under information items and that, but we need to just do a better job of letting everybody know that about the volunteer fire department and the amazing work that they do in our communities. Just wanted to, Thursday I will be attending the Mayor's Barbecue put on by the Tri-City Chamber of Commerce down in Port Moody. It's a sold-out event. It's a pretty fun event. All the mayors from the Tri-Cities get there, and we're asked a bunch of questions, and there's it's quite jovial and it's quite fun. I wanted to let everybody know as well the hub progress update. I was by there the other day. They're starting to drywall. We had initially heard that there was going to be, opening sort of mid-October. I don't think that's in the works as of right now. They just finished putting in the new septic system. They still need to do a bunch of work on the field, and as well, they still need to do a bunch of work inside. So, we will not have a meeting there until we have our grand opening, and right now, I'm thinking the grand opening is going to be either late November or early December is kind of my take on it right now. It's coming along amazingly. It looks very good, and everything is progressing. A lot of the weather has been very cooperative in regards to a lot of the site works in regards to stairs and the pouring of concrete and that. So that's where we're at there. Today I attended the Port of Vancouver AGM, and just wanted to kind of list out a couple things that's kind of interesting about our port. We are the number 2 in North America for total foreign cargo. 108 million metric tons come into the Port of Vancouver. For those of us on council that love cars, we are the number 1 in Canada for automobiles. There's about 340,000 cars come in through Vancouver Port. So mostly all the cars coming from China, Japan, South Korea all come through Vancouver, and then they get distributed throughout the country. And the West Coast, we are the #1 all along the West Coast, all the way down through San Diego. We are the #1 in total cargo. So it's quite an operation. I don't know if some of you have read in the news, there's going to be an expansion to T2, which just needs provincial approval. So that's going to really increase things quite significantly. And then the last thing I just wanted to bring up, I've received a couple complaints as of lately of Airbnbs in our city. I never ever thought that I would hear that people would be renting out. We've had some bed and breakfast, but Airbnbs have become a bit of a problem. Backyards are getting rented out for parties, and the parking has become a significant issue. This happened on Hemlock, and as well, there's a few other residents around that are actually renting out bedrooms per night, so they're actually turning them into hotels. So we currently don't have much in the way of bylaws to be able to address this. So it's one of the things I just would like to put on our radar that we're going to have to discuss in the fall, about putting in some rules and maybe a registration thing for Airbnbs, so that we don't, neighbors are not getting too pleased with them right now. And it also, the real dramatic thing is it takes out of the rental pool, which I check on a monthly basis, and we don't have a lot of rentals here right now, which I find a little bit troubling. And the rent prices are just, as I think everybody in this room realizes, simply outrageous. And when it really relates back to the volunteers and the young families in our communities that need to be able to be in our community, to support us on the fire department, to support the school that we're in, and all sorts of things. So some challenging in that. So I just want to make sure and just put that on the thing. Like I said, I never ever thought that we would have a problem with Airbnbs, but apparently it has become a bit of a problem. So I'll now move it over to the councillor's report. Councillor Trowbridge.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'll speak about the trustee meeting now. So basically there are 2 fire halls. They're all one fire department, but one hall because of distances and service and geography. One hall resides in Belcarra, one resides across the street here. Both are not up to current standard. That was, the province advised us and Metro advised us of that in 2019, I think it was. And we started a savings program, and similar to what we did with the hub, we started putting money aside and putting reserves aside, et cetera, et cetera. And we have significant reserves, but not enough to fund the halls. The halls have to be seismic rated, which ours are not. They have to have specific rooms for turnout gear, for the gear that firefighters wear to the actual incident. And currently, and this I think is an important feature and one that we talked about a lot, currently our firefighters' turnout gear is mingled amongst where the firefighters work on the machines and the trucks and so on. And the turnout gear coming back from an incident is covered with gaseous carcinogens and soot and physical carcinogens. And that's supposed to be separated from the firefighters. So currently our firefighters are not only risking themselves to protect us in an actual occurrence, but they're also, their health is being put at risk by the physical setup of our inadequate stations as they exist. And it's been proven that those carcinogens often are taken home to the firefighters' families. So this is a very serious thing. It's not a small thing. We have visited a station on Bone Island that we think will be a model for us. It's a very effective building, relatively low cost building, and it has all of the provisions that we need. And one of the main things that it does is it creates a space for housing multiple firefighters in sort of dormitories that can actually live there. So for us, based our firefighting based on volunteerisms and our communities being so costly to live in, that's one way that we may be able to constantly replenish our volunteer firefighters. It also was brought up more with the Belcarra firefighters. I should back up. They're all the same Sasamad Volunteer Fire Department, but each community has to provide manpower from their community. And in Belcarra, the volunteers are starting to age out. Many of them are approaching my age, and I can tell you I couldn't carry anyone from any great distance. So we're trying to get younger, more fit firefighters, and to do that, that's another benefit of a hall. The way this would be a capital investment, and the way capital investment works relative to Sasamat is that our two communities pay for both halls at a rate of 50-50 each. That's the way it's currently laid out. It's envisioned that the hall in Belcarra would be somewhat smaller because the needs for equipment, et cetera, are somewhat less there, and the physical layout of their land doesn't accommodate a bigger unit. Ours would be somewhat, I shouldn't say ours, the one in Anmore would be somewhat larger because it will be the training center and house more equipment, much as it is right now, to be honest. So the main thrust is that this is something that we can no longer hold in abeyance and try and save for. We came to the stark realization that when the very people that keep us safe are at risk based on us not rebuilding our fire halls, that's untenable. And so unanimously, the 6 trustees have said, we now need to start meetings and figure out a way to build these halls. Metro Vancouver has been tasked with coming with proposals. They're going to bring things back to us as a trustee group. And as Mayor McEwen said, our trustee meetings are public, and I'm hoping that we will sort of remind people. Normally we just let it go with the flow, which is fine, but I think given the gravity of what we're going to have to be talking about and deciding over the next several months here, I would encourage as many Anmore residents as possible to come to those meetings and hear what's going on and get involved wherever you possibly can. And then finally, one more element that was not really considered until we all started talking about the logistics. We went over to Bow and saw what they were doing, saw how they built it, et cetera, and we're not just using that as a model. We're looking at other models to try and meet the criteria, and it's a set criteria. We don't get to choose. There is a set criteria of the standards these buildings have to meet, and we're looking at those alternatives. But the one thing that became very obvious is it's not just a matter of tearing down a building and putting up a new one. The firefighters must remain active during the entire transition period, which means their equipment has to be stored in a climate control environment. They can't leave the trucks out in the winter to be covered with snow if somebody has an emergency, et cetera. So that's something that Belcarra is wrestling with right now. Anmore, thankfully, I believe that we have a rudimentary plan, I would say, to make a structure that we already need in the works yard and to use that structure during transition for the firefighters, and then it would ultimately transition to all the works yard equipment, et cetera. I don't think I missed anything.
Yeah, I think a lot of the needs and the requirements are going to be set out by our fire chief, Chief Sharp, for both municipalities. What else was I going to add? I think what Councillor Trowbridge said, that we knew that these halls weren't meeting standards back in 2015, and we saved up money to get an analysis done. So, we've had this, and we knew that this work was forthcoming, so we're just, it's starting to get some momentum. We're hoping to have a meeting near the end of October. Metro Vancouver will be putting a project scope together as well as some preliminary budget numbers, so. Yep, yeah, that'll be a public meeting, yeah. Yeah. Any other councillors' reports? Councillor Richardson.
It was an interesting summer, I would say. It's the summer that I've been most reached out by residents on various things they had concerns of. So I'm going to just go through the three major ones. The first one was septic fields failing on Ravenswood. So as part of that, I went up and down Ravenswood, pretty much every third, fourth day to see if I could smell anything. And I found nothing. So I have a question for the village. Do we get reports from Fraser Health on any failing fields? Can we get a report from Fraser Health on the failing fields?
We've requested assistance in the past from Fraser Health to come and regulate their permits.
Yeah.
And we've had, I would say, limited success in that area.
Do we have any data on which fields have failed or what issues are?
I've been involved with two directly. I can't remember the addresses off the top of my head. They were both on Ravenswood. However, to be frank, we kind of asked the authority to come and investigate. There was little to no investigation completed. Okay. And because it's not our permit, we don't
Yeah,
really
no,
have
it's
authority.
Fraser Health that does it all. Anyway, I've been on septic fields, 40 years old and they're still functioning. The other one was policing and the cost of policing.
Okay.
I might be able to help here. I was called out by Martin. I think I met you at one of the two, both on Ravenswood, and unfortunately the air was quite acrid. It was really horrible, and there were discharges on top of the soil. And at the time, I believe it was Martin who called Fraser Health, and they would not attend. And they just wouldn't attend. So we ended up, I can't remember the resolution, we ended up helping people sort it out, but there was the smell of raw sewer all in the area.
And
If I may, the way we kind of resolved it was we put some pressure through the building department for them to review it and look, and they did some modifications to their field and fixed it at that point in time. But we learned through the process that Fraser Health, I think they were understaffed at the time as well, so there was little to no help at that point to enforce the permit. So that's the route we would go down again. We'd inform Fraser Health for them to come and enforce their permits. The only reason that from a building department we could get involved is because they were actually doing active construction on their house at that point in time.
And if I can just comment, because I made a comment about this, there are some people that have upgraded their systems and are very, very passionate, and it wasn't fair to include all of Ravenswood in my comments because there is some that are doing an amazing job, have upgraded their systems and are very, very hands-on and actually educating neighbors in regards to what needs to be done. So please go ahead.
Okay, the second one was policing and the cost of policing based on the changes in Surrey and the RCMP and everything else. So I looked into that. The act that sort of polices all this is good to 2032, so we have at least another 9 years. I also learned that we pay about 1/4 of what other people pay. So if policing changes and we have to pay what the large municipalities pay, it will be a big hit. So I looked into that a bit to see what municipalities do, and they actually create a reserve fund to help in the transition. And on top of it, you have to build your own structures and buildings to house the police. So if the RCMP are disappearing and a police force is coming in, a provincial police force, and this is going to happen in the next, 5-6 years or something, which I don't believe it will, but if it's going to, then council and Anmore should have a plan in place to address it coming down the pipe, because it will be a large financial hit in the same way that we plan for any other sort of infrastructure type thing. So you can read about Duncan and what they had to do there.
If I can just follow up with the policing, are you done with the policing?
I'm done with the policing.
Okay, so interesting. Next week we're going to be at UBCM, some of us. So there is a big, this was published August 16th about the policing costs for small communities, and I'll just read it. It's a few paragraphs. province has informed UBCM, which is the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, which controls all of us, that there's going to be retroactive cost impacts for property owners and municipalities with populations under 5,000 and unincorporated areas as a result of the first RCMP collective agreement. Once the police tax rate has been determined, information will be shared by the province and that. It says municipalities under 5,000 in population and unincorporated areas do not contract directly for policing. Instead, these areas receive policing and law enforcement from the province through the Provincial Police Service. In accordance with Section 66.3 of the Police Act, the provincial government may recuperate up to 50% of the estimated costs of frontline policing through the police tax from municipalities under $5,000. So again, the province has a big say in this. It also goes on to say, the police tax is a provincial property-based tax paid by property owners within provincial policing jurisdictions. As outlined in the Police Act, the estimate for the police tax is based on the number of frontline members needed from the provincial service and average annual cost. With a population between 5,000 and 15,000, the province may recover up to 50%. Anyway, the first RCMP collective agreement expired on March 31st, 2023, and currently negotiations related to this collective agreement are ongoing, with only monetary items left to be finalized. So it's unlikely the second RCMP will contain a retroactive component as significant as this will be, and will have a direct impact on smaller communities. So the writing is on the wall in regards to what these costs are going to be, and I do agree with Councillor Richardson that we do need to look at it, because it could have a significant impact as we currently stand. So please go.
Okay, and the last one and the biggest one based on interaction was trees and the clear cut by the hall. I will admit that I was surprised and a bit disappointed. I will also state that council did allocate $330K for the Ravenswood realignment and tree management of that area. The tree manager was verbally told to us as 80% of the hemlocks were dying and the hemlock should be removed. I did not see the arborist report at that time. So we agreed to remove the 80% of the hemlocks which were damaged. There was no agreement to clear cut. There's been no plans for a parking lot or anything like that in that space. I don't know what happened. I actually think the residents probably deserve an answer on how that decision was made, who made it. The most stunning thing for me is I bumped into the logger accidentally because he was doing some work on somebody else's property. And this is the part that surprised me. He said that he gave a few quotes to the village, and one of them was to remove the danger trees, the 80%, and the other one was to clear cut because it was cheaper. And he told me, which I don't know is true or not, that the decision to clear cut was made before they started. So I'm curious to know, and I think many of the residents would like to know, how much did we pay these guys to do this? Does that include the mulching or the not mulching? How was that decision made? Because from a perspective of also a resident who had to do arborist reports to do tree clearing, the report that Anmore received was, I would call, exceptionally thin. Like when I had to do tree removal, I had to survey the location of every tree, every trunk size, every species in a report, and they cost thousands. And there is no way that I can imagine any resident would decide, okay, well, I'm just going to clear cut and there'll be no repercussions. You have to maintain your 20%, you have to replant, and I don't know how the village can have a tree bylaw and do that as an affront to the tree ball and what every other resident has to go through with respect to trees. Anyway, that's my thought on that.
Any other council reports? No? Councillor Crack.
Thank you. Just quickly, we had Councillor Weverink, Mayor McEwen, myself, and Councillor Trowbridge. We did a tour of TransLink, a behind-the-scenes tour of TransLink a couple of weeks ago. It was very well done and very informative. And I will also be attending UBCM next week for 4 days, Tuesday through Friday.
Good. Thank you. Chief Administrator Officer's report. Ms. Ulrich.
Thank you. So in addition to the committee recruitment right now, we do have a photo contest out to get photos from people throughout the village, different seasons, different scenic photos and whatnot. So we'd like to use those photos to replace the banners that were outside the Village Hub area. And as well, we're going to be planning some art installations in the new building and used for advertising and communication purposes. So please take a look at that. All the information is on the website, and submit your photos for the contest, which is open currently now until the end of this week. And also just a reminder to everybody that the bears are quite active right now. They're getting ready to fatten up for the winter, as it may be, and please make sure that you are securing your garbage and green waste, in particular your organics. Your garbage should not really have any attractants in it, but your green waste of course does. Wash your bins out regularly, make sure that you're locked away, lock your vehicles, that type of thing. We've been receiving a lot more anecdotal reports of bear activity lately. So that is everything for me right now.
Good, thank you.
I just wanted to talk trees, but I can.
No, wait, let's wait. Okay, we have some information items, general correspondence from the Township of Spalamuchin, Metro Vancouver Board and Brief, and a letter from the Peace River Region. Can I get a motion to receive the general correspondence? Moved, seconded, any discussion? See none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, we're now on to, oh, and we also had the BC Wildlife Service equipment, an email from the Epilepsy Society, sorry. Public question period. Public is permitted to ask questions to council regarding any item pertaining to village business. 2-minute time applies to speaker. Before we get started, I just wanted to have a few comments about the tree removal. The trees were removed based on the advice of a certified arborist who flagged that they were posed a significant safety risk. As part of the assessment of trees on village property, which went throughout the village, earlier this spring, the area of village-owned land on Ravenswood was identified as a top risk area due to the conditions of the trees, which were deemed dangerous and posed a significant safety risk. And unfortunately, we have had a lot of kids building bike tracks and stuff like that that were playing in here. It became very, very problematic. When a certified arborist tells us that trees need to be removed to address safety concerns, we take the action to do so. In this situation, we waited until after the bird nesting season and then proceeded with the work to remove the trees. Leaving trees that are at risk of falling and causing property damage, or worse, hurting people or pets, is clearly not an option for this council. We all love trees, that's one of the reasons we live in this community, but we are also responsible for ensuring the community is safe. The report from the certified arborist about the tree risks and the fact that the property is not an ideal area for replanting trees is what led to the current review of what we do with the public land to benefit our community, not the other way around. The plan to do a possible exit of Ravenswood has been in, we've posted that since about 2017, although the project was never formally approved to move forward, although there is a plan that we are going to be getting started on. The land, as Councillor Richardson said, was never for a parking lot. There are certain safety concerns as to the current road in Ravenswood Drive. It is a very, very dangerous road, and I drive it on many occasions, and when you get through that S-term, if somebody isn't on completely over onto their side of the road, you quite often could I'm sure there's many times where there's several accidents that occur, especially with the delivery vehicles who seem to want to race down the road. The road alignment will be a discussion that we'll be carrying on from now on in regards to Ravenswood. The thought is that we have had in many years is that the existing Ravenswood Road up near where the mailboxes are, so right near the entrance to Sunnyside, would be doubled up, which would double up the parking for the new community hub. I know that Councillor Trollbridge spoke to the arborist personally about this situation, wanting to know a lot of the questions that have been asked, and will be able to answer those questions. I have not planted to that. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that these, we have not any plans whatsoever about replanting the area, although we will be having a public consultation into what to do with the trees. They have suggested some specific trees that could be replanted, but a little bit of work would need to be done. So I'll open up for public question period. Come to the microphone and name and address, please.
It's Karen Palmer. I don't actually have a question. I just have a clarification on the siren. Can I ask for a clarification? Oh, so just to say that I lived in Hawaii for 10 years. The Hawaii siren system is not only for tsunamis. It's actually a general public warning system, and everybody who's in Hawaii knows that it's for tsunamis, it's for hurricanes, it's for fires, it's for floods, it's for terrorist activities, it's for anything else. So people who live there know that what you do when the siren goes off is you turn on the radio, you turn on the TV, and you look to your phone or these days your laptop to figure out what the problem is. So that it's misinformation to say that people didn't sound the siren in Maui because they were afraid that people were going to go up to higher ground. That's actually a narrative that's been discredited, and it's an attempt to try and convince people that something else didn't really happen with that siren system. So just so we know, we could have a siren system that's an all hazards warning system, and we wouldn't have to worry that people would be misunderstanding what it's for. It's meant to alert you to do something.
I think it would have to be at the discretion of our fire chief.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Thank you. Any other? Go.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, thank you for this opportunity.
Your name and address, please.
I was getting to
sorry,
that.
sorry.
Yeah. Sterling Sunley, S-U-N-L-E-Y, 2630 Sunnyside Road. Normally it's 2 minutes to clear my throat, so I'll try and be fast about this. I've written a letter to the village and handed a copy off to administration tonight. It's for the benefit of the mayor and council, and so I'm not going to read that. I am going to read some specific questions to which I'm hoping I will get answers for in my letter. The first is, why wasn't the decision to clear-cut Ravenswood Forest shared with Anmore residents before the wheels were set in motion? Secondly, why, when any objective and careful reading of the AR, meaning the arborist report, does not recommend clear-cutting, was the thrust of the arborist report ignored and an order issued to cut down all trees, living or dead, in Ravenswood Forest? ? Why was no bylaw placed on the council's agenda to affirm its decision to clear-cut the Ravenswood Forest? Fourth, what was the actual cost of clear-cutting the trees and shredding the same? Fifth, some trees were well over 100 years old and were neither dead nor decaying. Where are those trees now? Did the logging and the tree removal contractor recommend that A, he be allowed any trees he wanted, or B, would his fee be reduced by the fair market value of the logs removed? C, were any other prospective tree removal contractors offered the same option? 7, did the village undertake to independently determine the fair market value of the trees trucked off by the logger? Did the village prepare or receive a list of the logs it turned over to the contractor? 8, what plans are in the works for replanting the Ravenswood Forest, which the mayor touched on briefly? 9, what plans have been decided or are in the works for the former Ravenswood Forest? 10, how will the road extension affect the land formerly Ravenswood Forest, or will that land be used for other purposes, including event parking? Thank you very much.
And you've submitted all those
I
questions?
have submitted it all to you in writing.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
Brad Engel, 65 Elementary Road. My concerns were pretty much answered by this gentleman here. I do have some other questions about the clear cutting. I'm a certified arborist, have been for close to 17 years, 18 years now. And I walk through that part of the land almost every day with my dogs. To say that bike trails are constituting killing trees, it's absurd. It's utterly absurd. To say that those trees were all dead is absurd. I've dealt with Anmore.
I'm going to ask you, do you have a question?
I do.
Okay.
I'm leading up to the question.
Perfect.
All right? So I'm just summarizing my observations of that parcel. And my question is, who authorized the clear cut?
That would have been staff.
After final decision? Was it pushed through the council? Was everybody involved in that decision?
I've just answered you, sir.
What was your answer?
Staff would have authorized it.
Staff.
Yeah.
So clearly, Council Richardson, he didn't agree with it, did he?
We set policy
Okay.
in budgets. So
Okay.
yes, I think that's done. But and
So what-
if you have any further questions, I would
Right.
suggest you send us an email and we can hopefully get them answered.
My 2 minutes is not up,
Okay.
Mayor. Okay?
But
So,
this is question period.
yes, I understand.
Okay.
You know, like I said, I'm summarizing what my observations as a professional arborist was. I've gone through many hoops on my own property about taking trees down, and I had to leave, as Mr. Richardson said, detailed GPS coordinates, the whole 20%, all of that. When my neighbor beside me took 43 extra trees down off his lot, more so than what the tree permit said, and nothing happened to him. So he replanted trees, they're all dead now. Who does any inspection on replanting? Through the bylaw. You're told if you take trees down, you have to put 4 in. Who monitors those new trees and whether they die within 2 weeks or if they're dead now?
Normally, a bond is set for those replanting.
Who?
A bond.
Okay. Well, somebody has to check up to see if that bond has to be tapped into because the trees are dead.
Yeah, we have a public.
Who does
public bylaw person.
Who? Who is the bylaw person? Martin?
Martin no longer works in the village.
Martin no longer works for us. So
We
we've
have
got Joe
somebody new.
Nichols in that position, which has no tree arborist experience.
Nor did Martin.
Exactly. So he shouldn't have been in that position, should he have?
There's a lot more to bylaws than just trees.
Indeed. But this is what Anmore's all based on. It's the rural area, the trees. This is why I bought
Okay.
here.
Mr. Ingalls, I'm going to cut you off now. Do you have another
Okay.
question?
I'll come back in the next 2 minutes after the next one.
We're going to be adjourning soon. Thank you. Please.
Don't throw your finger at me, Bruce.
Hey, I'll ask you to leave if you're going to cause disturbance.
I'm not.
Okay, you don't need to say anything. Please.
Don't say it.
Jurgen Dukton, 1815 A East Road, Anmore. My questions to council pertain to the Ravenswood clear cutting and the village's understanding of science. Is it not true that the BC wildfires this summer were and are unprecedented over and above the previous years, which too were considered unprecedented? The more wildfires we have, the more carbon there is in the air. So is it not true that we need even more trees to absorb that increase in carbon? Otherwise, the climate gets warmer. Is this not true? So why were all the trees logged as opposed to being selectively logged? Some more questions, also science. Is it also not true that the more trees are logged, that there is less natural shade, so the soil gets drier, and the more water, including well water, disappears into the atmosphere and then gets wasted with subsequent runoff because of rains and then drier trees? So are we not contributing to climate chaos with clear cutting? Finally,
Sorry, finish up. Yeah.
Finally, what is the real purpose, the end purpose of all the clear cutting? Is it, or was it? Everyone seems to think It was going to be a parking lot. What is the intent behind all this? Thank you.
I'll answer that right off the bat. It's safety. But now I'm going to pass on to Councillor Trollebreg, who actually talked to the arborist.
Sure. So there has never been a parking lot contemplated for that property. So I don't know where that all came from, but that's, to put it in perspective, if the village wished to build a parking lot, you can cut the trees for a construction project. It doesn't need an arborist. It needs a report from an arborist, but it doesn't need the trees to be distressed or dead. So that's not really the point. Speaking with the arborist, originally she found that 80% of the trees needed to be removed because the entire forest was in decline, but specifically the hemlocks, which were the vast majority of the trees there. She then also suggested that it would be a good idea. Now remember, an arborist report, even if the arborist said these trees are dangerous, et cetera, the arborist can't force you to cut them. So that's an important distinction. But once village staff is made aware that there's a risk, it now transfers the liability to the village. So 80% of those trees were recommended to come down immediately. Then there was a recommendation and a concern for the remaining trees that essentially line the road down where the power lines are. And there's a concern for remaining trees that have lost their guard trees to now be exposed to wind that they didn't grow facing those winds. So there's a concern that those could have fallen into power lines. So those trees, when presented as a possible risk, that was another decision. Again, these decisions are staff decisions. They don't go through public hearings or anything like that. So the remaining trees, of which I don't know what that percentage would be, but certainly some of those, inclusive of healthy trees. No one ever said all the trees were dead. So again, I don't know where that came from. No one ever claimed that. But with the road realignment, if there were trees standing in the road realignment, those trees would have been removed as well. And then the arborist said that everything else would be, what are her words? If left, to remove only imminent hazards on Ravenwood site, it would need regular inspections, maintenance and hazard removals, which would be an ongoing cost, safety, and liability concern to the village. So with those recommendations, the decision was made to take them all out. It was more cost effective. It meant no more monitoring and no more potential risk. And for a public body, you have to do a risk assessment in terms of what your comfort is. And there aren't many public bodies, ours included, that are willing to accept very much in the way of public risk. So that's what the arborist told me. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Okay, hold on, I just wanted to, go ahead. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Karen?
Sure, thank you. Through the chair, as was stated by Mayor McEwen earlier, the primary issue was the safety concerns in consultation with our professional arborist. And in staff consultation, it was determined that both from a wildfire risk perspective, which has been talked about this evening, and from a health and safety perspective, that it was the best decision to remove those trees. As a result of the tree removal, now there is going to be engineering assessments and other assessments to see what exactly that land will be used for, whether some replanting will occur, whether some parking will be put there, whether some road alignment will occur. This is all a result of the need to remove the trees.
Just hold on, please, excuse me. Councillor Trollebreg just has something else to add.
Yeah, Michelle was the arborist that I spoke to, but she had an assistant with her who, I'm not sure if they were both arborists or just Michelle. I think they're both
Both
arborists.
are arborists.
Yeah, so there was a consultation between two professional arborists.
Okay. If you could just put your hand up, and I'll try and go to first-time people right now. So anybody else want to come up for a first time? Please.
I'm not
a
tree person.
If you-
Tree people go first?
No, it's public question period.
You dropped something, Nancy.
Yeah.
Thanks. So Nancy Maloney, 1724 East Road, not a tree question. So the province of BC has passed legislation making September 30th as a stat holiday. So this is the actual very first year of September 30th being a stat holiday. Most people probably know already that this is in honor of National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Prior to this, it was only a federal holiday. So only employees falling under a federal mandate were affected by the previous federal legislation. Now it is actually a provincial law enacted within British Columbia. Anyway, so it honors National Day for Truth and Reconciliation to commemorate the history and legacy of the residential school system. I actually did a master's degree at Simon Fraser in psychology, and my thesis related to First Nations adolescents, at that time. So I've done a lot of research on this issue and have a longstanding interest. The purpose of the stat holiday is to facilitate British Columbians participating in commemorative activities or educational events. And I know it's unlikely, in fact impossible, for anything to get scheduled to happen locally at this 11th hour. But my question is, could Anmore at a minimum post notices on the village signs and also on the website? And I can give you a copy of this wording. It could be something simple like, on September 30th, we honored the lost children and survivors of residential schools, their families, and their communities.
I think we had something last year, but no, I think it's a great idea. I know that we're planning possibly, an orange shirt day in regards to the village, so yeah.
That's also Orange Shirt Day.
Yeah, exactly.
It's on a weekend this year,
yeah.
but I know the village is closed on the subsequent Monday because it is now an actual stat holiday.
Perfect.
So, but on a more permanent basis related to this topic, and I'm very, very pleased, John, that you're doing the acknowledgement at the beginning of all of our council meetings. Somewhat unfortunately, it doesn't happen universally at the beginning of all meetings, which would be somewhat of the ideal. But could an additional change be for written documentation in Anmore, including like minutes of this meeting and others, and even the website include a land acknowledgement, John, such as you are doing at the beginning of these meetings, which is quite wonderful. So to just expand what we are doing in terms of that acknowledgement is what I request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else want it with the first time? Okay, open it up again for second time people just to do a follow-up, and then we're going to adjourn. So if you're more than welcome.
Sterling Sunley, 2630 Sunnyside. Councillor Trowbridge, were you quoting from the final report, or were you quoting from an original report that said 80% needed to be cut down?
No, that was
Microphone. Sorry.
No, that was from a discussion I had with her.
Okay, well, I would put it to you, sir, that is irrelevant. The report that was published by the village on its website is the report that the public have had access to, and that is the one on which we based our questions.
Sure.
And secondly, a point that I think we all need to think about is that administration may have made the decision, but they're not elected.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions before we adjourn? Please. If you can put it in a question.
Again, Brad Engel, 65 Elementary Road. Who hired the arborists? How were they lobbied, and how were they found to make this report? I looked on the IASA. I'm a certified arborist with exactly the same credentials. I couldn't find them.
Okay.
Who hired them? Where were they found?
That would be a staff. Yeah.
Staff?
Yeah, please send
Who?
an email.
Who? What staff? Who hired them? How with
Yeah, village
the
staff.
staff?
Yeah.
Okay. Where were they found?
Through the chair, this is a arborist that village staff and our public works department has worked with in the past, and I don't know offhand where exactly they found them from, but we have used them for our tree assessments and
Is that
We can get back to you, Mr.
we
Ingles,
can
in
get
regards
that?
to-
Okay, we
we'll
need
back
to
who
get
it was.
that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we need to find out who hired and who they were and where they came from.
Staff hired
Because
them after
they're-
getting quotations from
Yeah.
more than one arborist.
As Council Richardson said, the report is extremely vague.
Okay.
As I said, I'm a member of the community here. I've been here for 10 years, and I've done a lot of tree work here up in Anmore and jumped through so many hoops to get these tree jobs and lost a lot of customers in doing so. But I've jumped through all the parameters that Anmore's had, which it appears Anmore doesn't have to do for themselves.
Thank you.
Okay, and so I'm questioning, are our bylaws enforced?
We're going to get back to you with the process that it was to vet the arborists and the company, so we'll,
Because
yeah.
after my previous question was, who looks after the replanting stuff? My yard now is now becoming wind throw problem, and we talk about public safety in the parking lot, Constable or Council Trowbridge. Sorry, you kind of do look like an RCMP, but anyhow. My question is, as you say, public land, that Ravenwood's property is public land and it was about safety. Is my neighbors not safety? Aren't they public? So it doesn't matter whether it's that little piece of land or it's my neighbor's yard. My tree falls over and kills their kid in his bedroom when the tree falls over because it's dangerous, because all the other trees have been taken down and they become a wind throw problem and they're dying, like you say, because they're hemlocks. Then what is the issue? Why don't we just take all the trees down?
Okay.
Right? And then we get into the issue with this gentleman mentioned about our oxygen and the carbon that the trees take out of the air.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Appreciate it.